Okay, thank you very much. We're now down to discussion items and trustee comments. Do you have anything to present to us, Mrs. Boyko? No. Mr. Wong?
No.
Mr. Lang?
I do have a couple of comments. In my opinion, a travesty of competent township government took place recently in Westchester that I would like to discuss. During the trustee meeting dated April 24, 2012, as the meeting was coming to a close and we were getting ready to adjourn, Mr. Wong pointed out an individual in the audience who was accompanied by Mr. Wong's wife, Terry Wong, named Mr. In Cho. Mr. Cho did not ask to speak to the Board of Trustees, and the time for citizens' comments had ended. Trustee Wong then asked Mr. Cho if he would like to speak to the trustees. After deliberation, the board decided to let Mr. Cho speak. He was escorted to the podium by Mrs. Wong. We found out that he was a neighbor of Mr. Wong's and that he was concerned about Eagleridge at Eagleridge Drive, the road that he and Mr. Wong live on. He was concerned about the dangerous situation that occurred when he tried to cross the street to the west side of Eagleridge so that he could access the sidewalk. He asked for consideration to make his efforts to cross the road there safer. After he spoke, he was escorted back to his seat by Mrs. Wong. Mr. Wong acknowledges that Mr. Cho did not ask the board to speak and that his wife escorted Mr. Cho to the podium. Then Deborah Bentley approached the board and expressed similar concerns and a similar request, and who included in her concerns were safety concerns regarding children as they walk to school, and after a brief discussion, the trustees directed staff to explore a potential solution. At our last trustee meeting on May 8th, about 5 minutes before the meeting began, I get a packet of information from Judy Boyko regarding her findings and potential recommendations on this subject. I asked Judy if she was looking for a decision that night, and she said that she was. I told her I just received the information, I did not have time to review it, and that I was not comfortable making a decision that impacted taxpayers' money on such a short notice without having time to vet my decision. And since this was the very first time I had seen the information, I would not be comfortable rendering the decision that evening, especially since we would not entertain citizens' comments from the time the topic was discussed and before a decision was rendered. Then our meeting started, and one of the first items on the agenda was this topic. After research, staff presented an idea that required placing a crosswalk at Eagleridge Drive. Mr. Wong immediately made a motion that we move forward on this project without delay. I seconded the motion for the purpose of discussion. I informed my fellow trustees that I was not comfortable moving forward without having time to vet the decision. Mr. Wong was insistent that we move forward that evening. He stated this was a simple decision and that it was for safety. Safety was the main concern he cited. I pled with my colleagues to delay the vote one meeting. Ms. Boyko was even asked if by delaying the decision, would we delay the installation of the crosswalk or we would impact the price. Her answer was that if we delayed the vote for one meeting, it would not delay the installation of the project or the cost of the project or the completion of the project. After much discussion, Mr. Wong insisted that we move forward immediately, and Mrs. Stoker supported the decision, and the vote was 2-1 against me to proceed. This is highly unusual for us to make a decision involving taxpayer money on such a short notice with limited information and without any citizens' comments before we rendered a decision. Mr. Wong once accused me of having a conflict of interest regarding our discussions and actions regarding the Westchester baseball complex. I asked him to describe the nature of my conflict, since I do not play baseball, I have no children who play baseball, and I am not involved with the organization in any way, either financially or civically. On this decision regarding the crosswalk at Eagleridge Drive, since it only benefits Mr. Wong and his neighbors, using his own logic, perhaps he has a conflict. Since the last meeting, a few things have come to light that really makes me hope that my colleagues will reverse their decision and let the process be properly vetted. Maybe this is the right way to go. I don't know. I would just like to consider some alternatives. Here are my concerns. One, design of the project. Dan Meehan, who is with us tonight, a retired architect in our community with much experience in site design, spoke publicly after the decision was made by our board, expressing concerns for the design of the crosswalk. I had a conversation with Mr. Meehan this evening where he recommended not only the problems that he saw and the flaws of the design, but other programs that might make this place even safer than the crosswalk that I think deserves some consideration. My second concern, a crosswalk already exists. We have a crosswalk at the roundabout, which is literally about 100 yards away from where this crosswalk is proposed. Is this truly a good use of taxpayer money? My third concern is having two crosswalks so close together. We will now have two crosswalks within 100 yards of each other. This may have the unintended effect of confusing motorists or pedestrians. It may be prudent to conduct traffic studies or to find a similar situation and see what the unintended consequences were, if any. My fourth concern is lighting. There is currently no lighting at the site of this proposed crosswalk. However, there is ample lighting at the crosswalk which already exists about 100 yards away. We might have the impact of causing more accidents, especially for people who choose to cross the crosswalk when it is dark. They may have the feeling of being safe and secure or having the right of way when due to darkness a motorist may not see them and may be more likely to hit them. 5 is precedent. There are many locations in our township where potentially dangerous situations occur. We simply cannot afford to fix all of them. Are we setting a precedent that says we prioritize those situations based upon where a trustee lives and is impacted personally, or are we setting ourselves up for a situation where we have set a financial precedent and are bound to help others who find themselves in a similar situation? We simply cannot afford to fix all of the small problems in the township. My sixth concern is safety for children. A concerned citizen, Mark Welch, was at our last meeting. When this topic was discussed, he took it upon himself to investigate. He took it upon himself to sit in his car for 2 mornings and 2 afternoons to observe the Eagleridge intersection and the number of children and or other pedestrians crossing the street during the hours when the intersection would be used for school traffic. Here's what Mr. Welch found. Not a single pedestrian crossed the street in the morning going to school. During those 2 days of observation, 1 high school student walked to school. But when she got to Eagleridge, she turned left and walked 100 yards to the roundabout that currently exists and safely crossed at the location of the current crosswalk. There were no elementary students who crossed the road at that location and walked the 1 mile plus up Eagleridge to Freedom Elementary. Mr. Welch then drove up to Freedom Elementary, and what Mark saw there was shocking. Mr. Welch took photographs that I have copies of, that if anyone would like to see them, come see me after the meeting tonight, and I will show you. There are children by the scores walking to Freedom Elementary from their Beckett Ridge neighborhoods. Not on sidewalks, but in the street on Beckett Ridge Boulevard. These are elementary-age children walking in the streets on a road with a high speed limit. If we truly are worried about the safety of our children, we are spending our taxpayer dollars foolishly. There are better projects that can and should be considered. We should consider projects that do the greatest good for the greatest number of citizens. And 7, my last concern is the bastardizing of the system. As political leaders, we are entrusted by citizens to be custodians of the system. For us to pass a decision that encumbers taxpayer dollars without having time to properly vet the project and allow for citizen input and comments is a bastardization of the system that we have been entrusted with. I strongly encourage my fellow trustees to reconsider their decision made at our last meeting, and let's have time to vet the project properly and do the process the citizens have entrusted us with. Then I find out this evening from Ms. Boyko that they're actually going to start on the project in a small way tomorrow. What is the hurry on this project? Let's make sure we have it right before we move forward. I humbly and sincerely ask you both to reconsider your decision.
Thank you.
I just want to correct one thing, is that my reference to the project is that the sidewalk approaches are in. Tomorrow, the crosswalk will be painted and the signage will be implemented.
That's correct. And all I said is we are starting on the project tomorrow.
No, the sidewalks are in.
The sidewalk had already been done.
Yes, that's why I
Weren't there
reported.
before?
No, that's why I reported to the board this evening. The approaches are in
Oh, my answer is still the same. What's the hurry on this project?
to
Thank
make
you,
sure.
Judy. I stand corrected.
Well, may reply to Mr. Lane's accusation here. Well, first of all, I'm very glad that this was brought up. You realize our township is one of the largest township in this area. In fact, it's one of the most successful. We bring in more business, more jobs, more residents here than any of these surrounding counties here. And that Westchester is getting bigger and bigger. That our subdivision in the communities are exploding with people. People's everywhere. There are a lot of motor vehicles. Business are booming. That this crosswalk, it was requested also by the Eagleridge Homeowner Association, and that it is unsafe for children to cross the street. And that then he had checked with the police about furthermore, there is no guarantee that a crosswalk will guarantee the safety of the children. But it is at least something that a driver or pedestrian could be more sensitive when they cross the street. As far as other projects on top of the street, it was talking about near the school, Freedom Elementary. That I believe that is a project called Safe Route to School, and that they are working with the Butler County engineers, and that they're doing that project that is funded federally, I believe. And lastly, you attacked me personally of conflict of interest. Mr. Lane, since you brought it up personal, I would say that you are the most unethical trustee I've ever known.
Let's try and just stick with the facts. We don't need to make personal accusations here. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
That's all I have.
Okay. I'd like to make
I'd
it...
like to respond to that.
Sure. Can we do it without making personal?
Absolutely. And if any of that was personal, I apologize. It was not intended to be personal. I've never attacked you of having a conflict of interest. I can give you my exact words. I said, using your definition, perhaps a conflict exists. Never attacked you, never said that you have a conflict. I just said, using your definition, perhaps one exists. But Mr. Wong said that the subdivisions are exploding with people. That's not true anymore, Lee. If you look at what's going on in Westchester, since the economy has crashed, we have not been immune from that. Our subdivisions are not exploding. Our residential portion of the township, about 5 years ago, was about 92% developed. We're still about 92% developed. There have been some small developments, but I don't know any of it in Westchester in the last 5 years, and none on the streets impacted probably in the last 25 years. There's no explosion of people on Eagleridge Drive. There's no growth. The other thing you said is that Crosswalk is unsafe for children. And Lee, there is no evidence that I have seen that children regularly cross at that location. Matter of fact, from Mr. Welch's unscientific, I will add, and very limited investigation, he probably spent about, I'm going to guess, 8 to 10 hours observing. He didn't notice any children at all that cross the street there. So I've seen no evidence at all that it is a problem for children crossing there. And even if it is, that same problem exists throughout the entire township in many, many locations. We can't afford to fix them all. And why should we set a precedent? Then you mentioned there's no guarantee a crosswalk will guarantee the safety of children. I absolutely agree with you, 100% there. So we're going to spend this money with a potential problem that might not even exist without even being assured that it's going to work. Safe routes to schools, if that's a project that's worth looking at, maybe we should look at helping expedite that project instead of this project. Or maybe if it makes sense, even look at making funds available for that project. And attacking you for a conflict of interest. I just said perhaps one exists. So none of that was aimed personally at you. I was just trying to stick with the facts as I saw them.
What?
So if I attack you personally, please accept my apology.
Well, I accept it. There are over 3,000 homes in Eagleridge subdivision.
Yes.
That's a lot of people.
Yes.
You're talking about at least about 3 to 4 people per house, per household.
Right.
And then there are traffics cutting through there. They're rerouting, cutting through Eagleridge, coming down the hill. There are lots of traffic. In the morning, between the school hours and evening 5 to 6 o'clock, you can get out on that street. There are so many cars there.
Yeah.
I don't think that Mr. Welch is looking at the right time, at the right place. And I live in that area. I could attest to that.
If I could
Let me address that first, please.
Sure.
There are over 3,000 homes in Eagleridge. I assume there. I don't know that's an accurate number. Let's assume that is.
It's the largest.
But there's only about 53 of the 3,000 homes that are going to be impacted by this decision. If we look at the people that live on your street and the 2 streets off of it, I believe I counted 53 homes. Don't hold me to that number, but I bet I'm within 5 or 10 of being accurate. So if we're truly worried about safety of the 3,000 residents of Eagleridge and their children, this is not where the problem exists. It's up on Eagleridge Road by Freedom Elementary. If that's what we're really concerned about, that's what we need to work on. And I understand you and your neighbors may have a problem with egress and ingress at that location because of the traffic. A crosswalk won't impact that by 1 iota. It will not help cars, vehicular traffic that is trying to ingress or egress on that street.
Well, Mr. Lane, you just, about safe route to the school, I think I've been advocating this with Ms. Boyko can attest to it, that with the school, and there was another individual that's been working on the safe route to school up there to get a crosswalk across Eagleridge. So that's been addressed at least over 2 years ago. But I don't see you ever advocate that. Furthermore, you do not live in Eagleridge. You don't even know exactly how many homes in there. You live in high-class, Wellington, that your gated community, very safe. People live over here in a crowded street, crowded subdivision, and the school is right down there. I don't think you understand the magnitude of the problem here.
Well, let me just address that. Eagleridge has homes that are valued more than some of the homes in Wetherington. Eagleridge is a beautiful community, every bit as nice as Wetherington. And Lee, I represent my vision for the township, for all the citizens of Westchester. And I don't appreciate the reverse economic snobbery. It's not called for. I represent my vision of the community for everybody in Westchester, no matter where they live. Ms. Stover?
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, sure.
Just a couple things. I don't want to go tit for tat. I didn't write down notes on everything you said, but there were a few issues I wanted to address. Number one, allowing Mr. Cho to speak. We have a regular policy that we have citizens' comments twice during the meeting. Part of our policy also is, should somebody arrive who does not meet our general policies. For example, Joe Statzer, who comes maybe quarterly to give us a little update on our information from the auditor's office that he feels might be pertinent for us, under our standard policy has no right to speak. However, our policy also says if a majority of the board agrees, we will allow anybody to speak. And I look, is it okay with you speaks? Yeah, everybody's okay. So that's not an issue as far as I'm concerned. We, the Board of Trustees, allowed to come speak, that's a non-issue. Number two, you spoke of having no time to analyze this whole situation. The fact is, this issue was brought up when Mr. Cho and I didn't write down the name of the other woman. Deborah Bentley came up and spoke. After that, within a few days, Mrs. Boyko received and forwarded to all of us a formal letter from the Homeowners Association of Eagleridge asking for that crosswalk. Now, from my perspective, we were not being asked for that crosswalk by 2 people. We were being asked by 7,000 to 10,000 people, the residents that the homeowners association represented. So I put a lot of weight with that. Also, we had the meeting before, directed staff to go out and look at costs, look at this as a project, see what it would take, would it cost us, say, more than we had already budgeted for steep street repairs and improvements, and they did all that. They conferred with the engineer's office. They had no problems with the design, and in fact, I believe Mrs. Boyko said that they saw there might be some benefit to this. Okay. Another issue, you mentioned, I have sat out there at Eagleridge too. I went down there and sat and watched the traffic go by, and there's a lot of traffic going down that street.
No doubt.
And there's a sidewalk only on one side, and there is no busing for high school students, and the high school sits right near the bottom of Eagleridge. Now, most of us, I think, have all raised teenagers. You know that they will do anything to get that last half hour of sleep in the morning and then rush on their own down to the school. What you are proposing is, it seems to me, that it is not safe to cross on the crosswalk, or it's unnecessary because the students can walk 100 yards down to the crosswalk by the roundabout. But what you are suggesting is that these high school students who go to school when it's still dark in the wintertime, I mean, it is dead dark, when they go to school at between, 6:30-ish or so, they're going down the road?
That's right.
That it's safer than to walk the equivalent of a football field in the dark on that extremely busy road, that is somehow safer than in a crosswalk, which has got special signage drawing the attention of drivers to the fact that there could be pedestrians coming by at that spot. Now, it's my understanding that there are street lights in the vicinity, that there is some light in that area, because that's one of the things I asked Mrs. Boyko about. I consider that a safety issue. We were requested by the representatives of somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 of our constituents to please put that crosswalk in. The county engineer said he had no problem, that it could be a good benefit, that there was not a problem with traffic backing up at the roundabout with a crosswalk there. It turns out that we can do it within our budgeted amount for street repairs and curb repairs at this time. To me, it was a safety issue. I think people are safer crossing in a crosswalk than they are stumbling, particularly if it's dark, along the side in the road of a busy street. We had a gentleman killed on Fountains Boulevard because he was out walking after dark, wearing dark clothes, got hit by a car and killed. We put a sidewalk in there within a couple of years. But we got the approval of the Fountains, Union Station apartments right there, to make sure other people weren't killed. Here's a case where the representatives of this very large, I believe it's the largest subdivision we have, came to us and said, we see a real safety issue there, would you please do that? We went to the engineers, we costed out a budget, we found out that we didn't have to increase our budget at all in order to fit it into our street works. I couldn't see a problem. To me, this was a safety issue. It was fairly straightforward. I think after having spent really 2 weeks on this, between the time it was asked for and within a few days getting a copy of the Homeowners Association request that we put it in, I didn't see this was a complicated situation. And I do not like to delay for fairly what I thought was a straightforward project, which hopefully would improve the safety of people traveling on foot in that area. And I certainly don't have a conflict of interest because I live clear on the other side of the township.
Yep. Okay.
So that was my situation. That's why I voted for it. You yourself said at the time that you're probably leaning for it.
Sure. I still probably am.
And I just couldn't see a delay in what was a very simple, straightforward request by thousands, representatives of maybe even 10,000 constituents for something which would not cost us to budget one dime more to accomplish it. And maybe might help keep the, not just the children going to school, but the adults too. If you ever notice, if you're driving down Union Center Boulevard, you'll see a lot of people walking on the sidewalks along Lakota West Road and along, I think most of those probably come from Beckett Ridge. And how did they get there? Some of them, I suspect, crossed the Eagleridge to get there. What's wrong with having a crosswalk to help them get safely to the park that they seem to enjoy using? I just can't see the complexity of the project that you apparently are seeing. I thought it was scoped out. I thought we were moving forward efficiently. And because if this was just a nice-to-have project, maybe I would have delayed. But when we're talking about safety, for a fairly straightforward project, I could see no reason to delay. So I voted yes. Now, it was 2-1. This happens from time to time.
I'm used to
But
that.
what I don't like to see is it developing into a mud wrestling match up here. I think we're all adults, we're all professionals, we can handle this without making personal aspersions on the other person. A project came up, all of us, I think, thought it had something to do with safety. 2 of us were ready to move forward, so we did. I just don't see, and one other thing I wanted to make, and that was safe routes to schools. That is a school program, that is a school funding issue that the school has to take up with whatever funds it can find. I think there may be state or federal funds available, and they should be working on that. I hope they're working on it. As an individual, we might have something to say to the school board. As a board of trustees, however, it has been our general policy, as long as I've been on the board, that we take care of township business, the school board takes care of school business. They don't tell us how to run the township, we typically don't tell them how to run the school. We might individually have opinions, and I think it would be appropriate for any of us as individuals to approach, say, members of the school board and say, hey, I'm concerned about this or that. But I don't think it's up to us to take over a school project like Safe Routes to Schools. I think that's stepping outside. Number one, we can't afford it, as you were saying before. Yeah. Safe Route to Schools is a school project. The school has to find the budgets for it. The school has to set priorities for it. We're responsible for taking care of the township as best we can within the funding that we have available.
I'd like to address a few of your comments.
Sure.
You talk about citizens' comments and used Joe Statzer as an example. The only thing that was unusual about this is Mr. Cho and Ms. Bentley did not even request to make comments. Mr. Wong pointed them out and said, would you guys like to make a comment, as Mr. Wong acknowledged that he did. So that's the only thing that made this kind of unusual, and made, people maybe...
May I make a correction on that?
Yes, please do.
I did not ask him to come out to make a comment.
Oh, you acknowledged
they came in that late.
Hang on, Lee.
That we were just over...
Hang on.
There may have been some misinformation. Let's accept each other's comments as we...
We approved the trustee... You voted yes on the trustee minute meetings for that, and here's exactly what the minutes say. As the meeting was ended, that's my editorial, that's not part of it. Mr. Stoker asked the other 2 trustees if they had additional comments. When Mr. Wong observed that a resident, a Mr. Cho, had just entered the chambers and asked if he had any comments. Mr. Wong noted he lives in Beckett Ridge. Because the citizens' comment portion of the agenda had passed, Mrs. Stoker asked the other 2 board members if they had any objections if Mr. Cho had a comment. She said the board would need to agree to it. No one objected, so Mr. Cho approached the citizen lectern, assisted by Terry Wong. So
Is it possible Mr. Cho asked you beforehand if could he speak to us?
Yes.
Because he's never appeared.
Sure, I'm just saying.
He did.
That's
he
not,
did.
That's never happened
he's
before.
fine. He did.
Hang on.
He has. Wait a minute. Can I say something?
One person
I would
at
have
a
to finish
time.
addressing Ms. Stoker's comments.
You can finish that, and then if you would like to make notes, and we'll take these one person at a time.
I said I did not get research in time. When we're asked by the Homeowners Association to do something, we're asked by many people to consider many things. That is not research. So we did get that letter from the homeowners the day after our last meeting, but that's people making a request, not substantive research as to is this an idea or is this a bad idea? Does it make sense? You said when I am proposing the students walk down to the roundabout and it would be safer. Kathy, I'm not proposing anything. I don't know the best way to handle this. My only proposal is that let's just
saying
wait.
there's a crosswalk 100 yards away.
Absolutely.
You said that 3 times, so I figured you were encouraging
Okay.
kids to walk down.
Please don't interrupt me.
I-
I'm not. I wasn't proposing anything. All I'm saying is there are multiple solutions, potential solutions to this potential problem. And I'm still not convinced that it's a problem with students based on written testimony of Mark Welch and my own personal observations, which are very unscientific and very limited. I haven't seen that. There are no streetlights in the vicinity. The streetlights are at the current crosswalk where the roundabout is. They do not extend beyond the crosswalk, and this is 100 yards away. And I do recognize the representatives of the Homeowners Association said we had a problem and asked for our assistance to fix it. We can't fix everybody's problem. We can't afford it. And I'm just concerned about the precedents that we set. And I did not even bring Safe Route to Schools up. Mr. Wong did. I didn't even bring it up, so that wasn't even a topic. Now, we are not bound to wait on Safe Routes to Schools. If we think it's a good idea to make that a safer path for students to get from Beckett Ridge to Freedom, we can freely sit down with the Lakota Board of Education and then enter into agreement with them to help them do that. But you know, once again, it comes to a problem of affordability. So this whole thing is just, let's slow down, take a deep breath, and see what truly does the greatest good for the greatest number of people. I'm sorry you find that amusing, Mr. Wong.
Well, because you twisted words around so quick. You're the one that brought up about safe route to school just a few minutes ago, and then you twist around saying that I brought it up. So
We'll check the minutes on that.
Yeah. Number two is that Mr. Cho did want to speak many times to come here to speak before. He is blind. He could not drive. He asked that my wife bring him here. So as a neighbor, would you do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. All I'm saying, it was unusual. He didn't ask. He didn't come up during citizens' comments.
He had asked apparently at some time.
Well, he may have cut a deal with you, Lee, that I wasn't aware of.
That's unimportant. We all
Approach you.
Mr.
That happens to me all the time.
You could have said no.
Citizens approach me all the time with the same stuff. I'm not making you wrong for
Mr.
that.
Lane, that's not really an issue of when he spoke or if he spoke, since we all agreed, and under our speaking at meetings procedure, that's the policy we have. If somebody who does not otherwise meet our criteria, they're not a resident, don't own property, don't own a business, didn't arrive during citizens' comment, whatever. At any time, the Board of Trustees, and we did, I asked you to, and
Sure.
everybody said, sure. Mr.
I have
Cho
no
came
problem
down
with
to
it.
speak to us, let him speak. I don't understand why you keep bringing it
My
up.
only point, it was unusual. And I did have a request. Will you guys consider reversing that so we can properly vet this?
Oh, you want us to go tear up the concrete?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Okay.